Good afternoon, everyone. This is Susan McGuire, and I'm Director of Professional Development at ACCE, and I'm very happy to welcome you to this afternoon's webinar. Today, we are happy to present the first webinar in our From the Winner's Circle series of webinars presented by Chamber of the Year Award winners. We're delighted to have Jennifer Chittenden of the Des Moines Downtown Chamber present on the Chamber's Leadership, Education, and Advancement Pipeline, or LEAP program. This program supports women business leaders and business owners in Central Iowa through skill-building teaching sessions, inspiration, and peer networking. Before I turn the program over to Jennifer, I do have a few housekeeping notes. First, attendees are in listen-only mode during the webinar to avoid background noise. And second, after Jennifer's presentation, we'll have time for questions, which you can ask by using the question function of the webinar. The question box is on the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Just type in your question, and I will read the question to Jennifer at the end of her presentation. If we run out of time and don't get to your question, or if you have a question that you would prefer to discuss with Jennifer offline, you can feel free to contact her directly. Her contact information will be included in the presentation on the last slide. We here at ACCE can also get in touch with you afterwards, after the webinar, if you've typed in a question and we just haven't gotten to it yet. So no worries, we'll get in touch with you if we don't get to your question during the webinar itself. And third, the webinar is being recorded, and it will be up on the ACCE website on the ACC University webinar page by Monday, February 4th. So look at it there, and I will let you know towards the end of the webinar where to find that page. In the meantime, the presentation slides are already uploaded to the webinar panel. They're on the right-hand side of your computer screen. You can click on the presentation to download it. If you can't download it for any reason, or you'd just rather not do so during the webinar, no worries. I'll post the presentation slides along with the webinar recording on that webinar page. So you will be all set. So with that, I will introduce our speaker today. Jennifer Chittenden has served as the Executive Director for the Des Moines Downtown Chamber of Commerce and its 110 member businesses since 2011. Since then, the Chamber has grown to over 350 members and serves to connect and strengthen the core of the Des Moines metro area through customized programs built from member feedback and active volunteer engagement. Jennifer was recognized in 2014 as one of Des Moines' 40 under 40. She was a recipient of the Regent Scholarship from the Institute for Organization Management and received her IOM designation in 2017. And the Des Moines Downtown Chamber received regional recognition for its Leadership, Education, and Advancement Pipeline, or LEAP program, which she's going to be presenting on today, as well as the Downtown DIG, the Development Insights Group series, which won the Event of the Year awards from Mid-America Chamber Executives in 2016 and 2018, respectively. And then, of course, in 2018, the Des Moines Downtown Chamber was a proud ACCE Chamber of the Year Award winner. Jennifer has a background in media, advertising, and corporate training. She's a graduate of the 2009 West Des Moines Leadership Academy and has contributed to many regional boards and committees. She received her BA in Communication Studies from the University of Iowa. She and her husband, Aaron, have two children, Dante and Alexandria, and Jennifer and her son are proud Taekwondo black belts. So, thank you, Jennifer, for being with us today and presenting on your LEAP program, and please take it away.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you to everybody who's joining in on the discussion today. So, as Susan mentioned, we are a very proud 2018 Chamber of the Year winner. And I know I was talking with her a little before the broadcast that I had attended one of these from the Winner's Circle webinars early on when we were considering even applying. And I hope that our message today helps you frame and be inspired accordingly so that you can also be in that circle in future years. Just a little bit history about applying for the Chamber of the Year. I was attending the Institute in 2015 and did not know that such a thing as Chamber of the Year even existed at that time. But learned about it when I was there from Brad Lacey, if any of you know him. And was like, oh my goodness, we have some really unique, interesting programming. We should look into this. So we did. And I was convinced that this was something that would be really good for us to wrap our board around and to start to think about what would a Chamber of the Year look like for the Des Moines Downtown Chamber. So came back and started talking with our board of directors and telling them, we need to apply for this award. We should be a Chamber of the Year winner. We're doing some neat and innovative programming here in Des Moines. And I don't think they understood what that was at first until Mick Fleming came to town and revealed the Horizons initiative to us. And as he went through at that time the 8 initiatives within the Horizons, we kind of looked at each other and thought, oh my goodness, we are doing something that is very future forward. And maybe this is something we should be considering. So the board at that point was fully on board with working towards applying to be a Chamber of the Year. And so in 2017, we put our hat in the ring for the first time and made it to the finals. After that, it's a lot of work, as many of you know, to apply. We were a little discouraged. I was a little discouraged and wasn't planning to do it in 2018. But at that point, the board had drank the Kool-Aid and insisted that that was something that we needed to do. And I'm very grateful for that insistence and that encouragement. And they were very, very involved in the application in 2018 as well, because that was the year that we then won. What made it extra special for us as the Chamber that year was it was our 10-year anniversary as a Chamber of Commerce. We received the award in our very own city here in Des Moines, and it was at a Chamber member business. And from our perspective, it just does not get any better than that. So that's the perfect trifecta. It's the kind of thing that movies are made of, and I hope that all of you can have that same kind of experience going forward. So jumping into today's presentation, I'm here to talk about our award-winning LEAP program, which stands for Leadership Education and Advancement Pipeline. We're going to talk a little about the beginning of that program. We'll get into the nuts and bolts of how you can create a program like that in your own community. And then we'll finish up with some success stories as well, just so you can see what's happened since we've implemented that program. So let's jump in here. If my slides will forward. Susan, any help here?
It doesn't, it's not advancing.
Oh, there we go. Okay, now I got it.
There we go. Sometimes because of the internet connections, things take a little time. So you're good to go now.
Okay, sorry for the delay. Bear with me here. So just a little history about the Downtown Chamber as we covered. We're 10 years old in 2018, so now we're into our next decade and chapter. But we are a very small chamber. We are 2 full-time staff, 17 board members, and we have 5 major operating committees. Each of those have some subcommittees and some task groups associated. But what really makes the chamber run is our volunteers. We have over 100 active volunteers through those committees who help and participate with all of our programming and services just to keep things running forward. In my introduction, that was provided right before the ACC conference this last summer. We were at about 350 members then. We are at nearly 400 members today. We have taken a steep jump forward. And so one piece of advice is if you do apply for the Chamber of the Year, make sure that you have a plan for if you win. That is something that we did not anticipate, but that is good news and bad news at the same time, is that when we won, we of course were at the table more frequently, but we had a new energy from our members. A lot of them wanted to be re-involved, and we had a lot of businesses who wanted to become members. So have a plan for if you do win, what are you going to do to accommodate for that growth? Because that's what we've been experiencing and continue to experience going into 2019. Our chamber is primarily downtown Des Moines businesses, but we also have businesses from all around the metro. Anybody with an interest in the downtown core can and should be a member of the Downtown Chamber. Primarily, we serve the small and medium-sized businesses, but we also do have large employers who are members of the chamber as well. So as we develop our programming and our services, we make sure that it revolves around our mission. And our mission is driven by 3 key tenets. Do those provide knowledge sharing? Do they foster civility? And do they provide our members and constituents with an understanding of economic issues? If something does not fit within that criteria, we're not doing it. So the programs that we're talking about today do fit into that very well, and you'll see how. So I'm going to go backwards into our history. This is about 2014. And at that time, we were recognizing that our members needed to be engaged in a different way. So we created a member outreach committee. And what we did is we sat down with as many members as we could. This is tapping into that volunteer base and tried to understand where they're coming from. So we sat down, interviewed them, asked the same set of questions, got to know them, built relationships, and we listened for trends among our members. And when you do that, you do start to come up with what are your members really needing as a whole. So here's the 5 basic questions we made sure to ask everybody that we sat down with. 1, why are you a member? We should always be asking that question. 2, what are your biggest challenges? Some like to frame that in what keeps you up at night. 3, how has your business changed in the last 3 to 5 years? That's really telling. But then jumping into that, what do you plan to have happen in the next 3 to 5 years? And then are there any additional services or programs that you might need? So from those questions, some issues started to emerge. And one of the issues that our members were bringing up is they were very concerned about this last in the nation ranking with regards to women-owned businesses and their economic impact here in the state of Iowa. Iowa was ranked last in the nation, 51st, and that's kind of an abysmal number for us. It was driven by the American Express reports as well as some other similar reports at the same time. It was actually kind of a baffling thing. We didn't understand why this number existed. It wasn't obvious to us on the front end of that. So there were a lot of groups who were starting to look into this as an issue. One of the things, though, that we noticed is this is not only just an economic issue at play here, but it's a disconnect for our community. We have a lot of community pride. In fact, as you can see, we were voted the metro with the most community pride by Gallup. And so to be ranked 51st for us was kind of a slap in the face. And that t-shirt that you see on the left-hand side is actually a real t-shirt that's printed and available for purchase if anybody ever wanted one. But we do sometimes get made fun of because we do like to tout that we're number 1, number 2. So again, going back to being the worst in the nation, we needed to do something about this. That combined with the statistics that we saw on the previous slide, it was very clear that we're not dealing with what some were calling a women's issue, but this was rather an economic issue. And that's a time for the chamber to really get involved. Now, as I mentioned, there were a lot of entities and a lot of groups and individuals who were already trying to address the issue, but it looked a little like this graphic on your screen. There were so many of them going on at once. It wasn't really clear exactly where you should go. If you were a business that was looking to start or expand, where do you begin? They were all kind of jumbled together. And what was striking to us was none of those resources that were available were chambers of commerce. Certainly they had services available, but nobody was specifically focused on helping to grow and expand women-owned businesses. So again, as an organization, we were looking for relevance. We were listening to our members and hearing that this was a need. This was a great opportunity for us to jump in and address this as an issue. So we created what we know today as the LEAP program, Leadership Education and Advancement Pipeline. Its goal is to connect, simplify, and stimulate. When we look at it, the program provides knowledge sharing for anybody who's attending. It fosters an environment of civility, and yes, men are encouraged to also be participating, and provides a sense of economic understanding for those who are there. We wanted to truly be a pipeline between the attendees and all of the resources available. So that clustered circle that we saw before, we want to break that up, clarify it, and help our attendees understand what each of those groups and entities do and how those can help them move forward in this issue. So as Susan mentioned, in 2016, this program was recognized as the Event of the Year by the Mid-America Chamber Executives. That was a real honor for us, and it was also a validation that we were on to the right track. The Mid-America Chamber Executives, if you're not in Central Iowa, that is our 6-state regional chamber association. So it's become a community for the attendees is what we found. It's a safe space for them to be. Some will describe it as we now have a tribe of sorts when it comes to the LEAP program. Not necessarily a clique. It's not quite like that. It's more of a very open discussion, but there's definitely a feel in the room that's somewhat intangible and indescribable. This program is unique in that factor. We wanted to make sure that we were building a program that complemented a lot of what was going on, but that didn't really compete with it. And I think that's something that helped the program in its growth as well. And we'll talk a little about that later on. As mentioned, we encouraged men to attend. In fact, we always prepared our speakers to make sure that there was no male bashing allowed in that program. And we think that was really important because some of the programs that existed in the community at the time were open to women only at the time. And that sometimes became more of a round table of what was wrong with one gender or the other. And that wasn't what we were looking for here. We were really looking to keep on the side of business and an open exchange of information and concepts. And we wanted to have differing viewpoints in the room. And that's where having both genders in the room really was needed in order for this project to work. So the way we framed it to the general audience is while the content is geared towards women, everyone can benefit. And we made sure that the content was relevant to both men and women, but that it really had the emphasis on helping women grow and expand businesses. To help reinforce this messaging, we actually have a LEAP committee, and they developed a LEAP mission, vision, and values for the program. And this helps also drive it forward and clarify all of that. They wanted to make sure that it was very simple, easy to remember, that was very clear. So it's just truly about empowering and motivating women and helping them reach their fullest potential. One of the clever things I think they came up with as a committee, though, were the values. Again, easy to remember. Leadership, education, and advancement are part of the name. And then the pipeline to prosperity, what we're trying to do. So this is what LEAP looks like right now. If you were to say, what is the LEAP program? How is it structured? How does it work? It's 9 monthly workshops, and each of those workshops has a short networking period, approximately 20 minutes, includes meal. We alternate breakfast and lunch when we do it to accommodate the majority of people. Some can make it for breakfast, some can't. Some can make it for lunch, some can't. So that helps. We get feedback every year to not change that. So that alternating every month has been a real perk for the program. We do keynotes or co-presenters. In the early days, we would do some panel discussions, but those did not go over as well. So we really stick to just keynoters or 2 speakers at most who complement each other highly. And we've also added into the program a resource table. So when you arrive there, there are tables with resources on there available to you for free as a guest of the program that you can take with you. There might be resources from the SBA, the SBDC, NABO, any of those organizations that were in that cluster circle and beyond are there on the table for you to have access. And hopefully this year we can actually get some more representatives from those organizations as well, just to continue to be a pipeline and a connector through the event. The committee also, originally when LEAP started, it was 10 monthly workshops, March through December. But December was never great in terms of attendance, so we knocked off December this year and instead added in a half-day fall conference on top of it, and that worked beautifully. So that's how we're going to move forward. This last year, our attendance, we had over 150 men and women at the various events. I think our lowest attendance was 125 people. In the early days, we were looking more at somewhere between 30 and 60 people. So this has been a big growth for the program over the course of its 4 years, too. All ages are in the room, kid you not. Everyone from interns to retired are in that room. All industries, but of course, being the insurance capital, we have lots of finance and insurance, of course. All experience levels. And that's kind of nice that when you're starting off in your job and you're sitting next to a CEO of a company at an event like this, there's a lot of growth and connection that can come. In all business sizes, whether you're a small business or a large employer, everybody feels welcome and feels like there's value in the LEAP program for them. Our revenues for this program are over $60,000, and we sell it as a series or as individual workshops, but we really push this series registration when possible. And then the other thing we try to do is just make sure that any sponsorship that we gain covers our expenses so that we have a really nice margin to reinvest into the program into the next years. We did get a federal trademark on the name in 2016, and we'll maintain that. And that's with the idea that we could potentially license this program in the future. But needless to say, for a small chamber, as you can see just from the revenues, this is the Cadillac of our programs, and it continues to be the biggest program in our budget and a big part of our overall budget as well. As mentioned, we're not doing panel discussions either, so if you're looking at creating something like this, I do suggest that you stay away from panel discussions. We just did not get a lot of interest in that format. So I'm going to digest the audience breakdown just a little more. As mentioned, in the early days, we had 30 to 77 in attendance. 2018, 125 to 155 was our average. But what's interesting is coming into 2019, we actually are looking at different venues because of size. We're looking at going somewhere between 175 and 200 attendees or more. That is the growth trajectory that we're seeing with this. It's one of those that when people are attending, they don't go away. They're coming back and they're bringing friends, and companies are sending more and more every year. In fact, if you look at the chart on the right, you'll see just the change from 2015 to 2017, that the growth in the percentage of our large employers versus our small employers being part of the audience have actually flip-flopped. So we'll talk a little later on. We've made some changes to the program to better accommodate our large employers who are now making up the bulk of our audience. So after we launched, what we saw is that other chambers were catching on to what we were doing and also agreeing that this was a great idea. And that's what we wanted from the start. We didn't want to be the only program. We wanted to stimulate other chambers to do similar kinds of programs, because the more programs like this that there are in the state of Iowa, the better we are going to do to combat that 51st in the nation abysmal ranking. So within a year, 3 of our local chambers started similar programming. They all had their own way of doing it. It wasn't exactly like ours, but it was a program focused on growing and expanding women business owners and leaders. Since then, we're seeing many more of those pop up through the state and the region, and we hope that you are also interested in having a similar program if you don't already have something in the works. So these are the items that we are watching for, and we set these up on day one as we developed the program. What is success for the LEAP program? And success to us means somebody who's attending is creating a business plan, or at least looking into creating a business plan. We want them to start one if they haven't thought about it, if they have the idea that they want to be a business owner. That they're accessing the local resources and they know how. That they're expanding their business if they're a current business owner. If owning a business isn't for you, mentorship is also a metric of success. Are they mentors, or are they finding mentors? Simply joining boards or committees is a step up, and starting the business is just that's the cherry on top. We hope that there's a lot of businesses that are starting as a result. Some additional outcomes that we found reported in our surveys have been that our attendees are taking more risks, that they're definitely having a huge increase in confidence, self-confidence, that they are managing their work and life priorities a little better. Resilience is a big part of it, that they're willing to try new things and get back up when it doesn't go right. Being more assertive, and of course those mentor and mentee relationships. So here we are today. This study just came out a couple weeks ago, but here we are from 2015 to the end of 2018. Iowa now ranks in the top 10 in the nation with regards to women-owned businesses and their economic impact. Now, we definitely won't take claim for that statistic changing for the LEAP program alone, but we know that we're a part of that number, simply through our own efforts and the people that we've inspired and built, but also helping to stimulate ideas in the community, helping to clarify the resources available. And it's really all of those efforts as a state working together to make this number happen. Now, what I will address is if you're one of those states that is in the darker blue, give me a call, because this is a program that would work really well for you if you are concerned about that ranking for your own state. And we can certainly talk about some of those early days and some of the nuts and bolts that in finer details that we won't have time to get into today. But I'm happy to take your call or your email anytime and talk about this. So I'm going to move on to part 2, and this is really kind of the meat of the presentation, is 5 steps to create a program that will empower your women business owners and leaders. Naturally, I'm going to share what has worked for our own community, but you can translate and use hopefully these steps in just about any community that you're part of as well. So the first one, and this one won't be a surprise, is to gain buy-in. You have to have your stakeholders before you even start any sort of programming. And what we did is we actually started with an advisory council. These were people in the community who were very actively involved, probably the loudest around the issue. And we pulled them together and just said, help us understand what is at the root of this issue, what's going on, what are the gaps in our community, how can we help fill those gaps? We're not trying to figure that out ourselves as the chamber. We're using the experts to help direct us. Taking their feedback also turns them into our biggest cheerleaders for the program. And of course, in the early days, they helped connect us to a number of resources that we didn't even know existed that helped the program come alive a little faster than it might have otherwise. Not to mention connecting us to other stakeholders and potential sponsors that they're aware of because they're bought into our program as well. So that is one step. I took a little bit of a risk. Normally, you should probably talk to your board before you start a new program or present sponsorships to your companies, but I actually went the other way around. So just to give you a framework of why, at the time, we were working off of a budget of $77,000, so not a lot. And very little of that was allocated towards programming, and very little did we gain for sponsorship in that time. So I knew the LEAP program was going to be very expensive, and before presenting it to the board, I wanted to come in with some solid numbers and guarantees from members who had said if we were going to move forward with this program, they were going to be right along with our side. And then basically went to the board with a strong budget and said, if we do this, here's what's going to cost. Here's what we will probably gain from this. And by the way, guess what? You're not going to lose a cent on this program. And that's what we needed to get the board's buy-in to make it happen on year one. But I will admit, it was a big risk for us. And I think we knew that because there was nothing of its kind already existing in our local chamber world. And that was a lot of money for us when we're not used to spending that much on programming alone. But they believed in where we were going. They believed in our potential and went with it. And I don't think they've ever looked back. So step 2, I like to say, focus on the purpose. So assuming that you have some buy-in, now you want to ensure that the purpose of what you're doing is solid and sustainable. Can you report on the metrics of success to your investors? Do you have those in place? Do you have some data capabilities to gather that? With so many potential competing programs, we also focused on how ours was connected to the programs, not how they competed. And that was really big for us because there's the potential for us to come in with another program and other entities to be very jealous or feel like we were stepping on their feet. So instead, we wanted to make sure that it was very clear how we were being a pipeline, how we were going to complement and build up their programs, and the effort to develop ours. The other part that was different, again, was just insisting that we needed men in the room in order for the program to work. So getting into the third step, that's the design. And this is my pride and joy. As Susan mentioned in the introduction, I have a background in some training and development. And so it makes program development kind of fun for me at the same time. But I think it also gives us a little advantage at times when we're thinking about what are those components that make it tick and what makes it work. A program is only as good as what's needed by your audience, even if they don't know that they need it yet. So we begin with actually the overall broad topic. And those topics begin with surveying our audience for ideas. Going back to those original surveys, what are they asking for? What are their needs? What's the broad topic that's going to meet that need? Once we have the topic in place, then we determine the takeaways for each topic. So let's say work-life balance is the broad topic. You could go a million directions when talking about work-life balance. So what specifically within work-life balance do we want to make sure that our audience knows how to do by the end of each session? So we develop a few takeaways for them that they can anticipate. The last step is the speaker. The speaker is oftentimes where people will start. Hey, I've got a great speaker and they can talk on this and they can talk on this. I advise against that. Start with your overall topic. What are those takeaways? And then who can speak to that overall topic? Now, the other thing I put into that, though, is to have backups. And you maybe don't do backups for everything that you do already. But when you're doing a program this big, I highly recommend backups. And even on the visual, the slide, that lady who's presenting, she was a backup for us this last October. We had a presenter who we confirm all of our presenters in advance of even opening up the presentation. And she, the presenter we had secured, ended up getting called away last minute. So we had 1 week to fill in with a speaker. Thankfully, we have backups. So we were able to go to this lady and say, okay, the opening's here. Are you ready to go? Let's talk about what you're going to present about. How are you going to present it? And she was ready to go with it. That program was a major success. She knocked it out of the park that day, in fact. So some of the best surveys we got all year. I mean, actually, I'd be very curious to see what the original speaker would have gotten in comparison. But we've actually had less than a week's notice before with speakers. So just always make sure you have somebody who is ready at a moment's notice to get up and speak if need be, because rescheduling an event with 150 people is challenging, and it's much easier just to have a backup speaker ready to go. So I have a handout that'll be made available to you, but I'm just going to show you a quick slide. This is how we structure our curriculum every year. So we've been putting into some general tracks just to kind of give our committee focus. But again, you can see we start with the topic. We boil down to what are they going to get out of that overall topic? What's the specific takeaway or takeaways? And then who's going to speak to that, as well as who is our backup for that. We also put in there what kind of workshop, and you'll notice in MC too, we found that having a volunteer MC or a regular MC makes a difference in the overall structure of the program. So once you have your curriculum, then it's time to make sure that your speakers are 100% aligned with your goal. And I put this in here specifically because in year 1 and year 2, we had a couple speakers who went a little rogue on us, who had their own agenda despite us communicating to them what we wanted them to do. So we meet now in advance with every speaker, state the specific takeaways to them. We create a presentation plan with that speaker, exchange contact information in case of emergency, and we agree on those roles and responsibilities. Who's going to bring the handouts? Who's going to send the PowerPoint? When do you send the PowerPoint? All of those specifics. To complement that, and this is another template that you have available to you, we have a template that we use to guide with that speaker. So now we have documentation of that conversation. If somebody goes rogue again, we can always go back to them and say, hey, look, you were going to speak on this. What happened? We didn't have that in the early days. So this is a lesson learned. We always have our documentation. We also like to have this documentation because it's something that we can send to the speaker a week or 2 weeks in advance just to remind them of here's what we're expecting. Has anything changed? And in some cases, maybe they haven't even put their presentation together. So this will be a nice stimulant for them as well. We also put in there the agenda so that they know how the time works. And there's more to the template that you're going to get. This is just a screenshot, but we'll take some notes. We'll actually even time out the presentation with them. We'll get as specific as we can just to help them make sure that they're speaking the way that we had hoped and wanted them to speak to our audience. So this is the last step I am going to share, but I have a few complementary slides to go along with it. You've got your speaker, you've got your template, you've got your program, you've launched it. Now you need to grow the program. You need to, like a business, you need to always be working on your program to grow it. Once you have a good program, you can't just let it stop because the needs are going to constantly be changing. So you need to be vigilant about what's going on and what needs to adjust. So with that, our advice is to keep your content fresh, survey regularly. In fact, we would put surveys on the tables with every event up until this last year. They had just the basic questions, but also what ideas do you have? This last year we went electronic, so we sent those out electronic immediately following each program and then evaluated those surveys at the committee meetings each month. Going back to that company size, we had noticed the shift in small to large employers as our primary audience. And with that shift, the demand was less from being that resource pipeline that we were in the first few years to actually now we need a little more professional development. We were finding that our large employers were sending groups of individuals to the LEAP program to get the information. Then they would come back to the company and they would incorporate it into roundtable discussions, women's groups, team meetings, conversations, but they were using it to build entrepreneurship as well. And that was going to benefit from more professional development. So via the committee's advice and our survey advice, we changed into more of a professional development mode versus the resource pipeline. The need for that has also shifted as well, just in our community. Secondly, we ensure that the venue attracts, not detracts. We are changing venues this year, partly because of size. We did do an RFP, but the venue that we chose was actually the most expensive venue. And at first, I was a little opposed to that until the committee expressed that having that venue was actually going to create more registration and better support overall for the program. And they're right. So just be aware of your venue, because the one that we were working with previously was going to actually cause us to lose audience members. There was no doubt about it. It was up on the 13th floor of a hotel. They had 3 elevators, but only one of them seemed to ever be working. And when you have 150 people coming and going from an event, one working elevator up 13 floors does not keep attendees very happy. So we needed to change venues. I'll be anxious to report out at the end of the year, but I do agree that the accessibility of the new venue is going to be a big game changer for the program. With that, we raised prices. We raised prices three times over the course of the LEAP program. And every time we do that, we just make sure that when we do a price increase, we add something else of value into the benefits package if they are a series attendee. So jumping into number 4, but it ties into that same thing. In 2016, we raised prices. We add a complimentary LEAP guest pass. Everybody who had registered for the series would get one of these guest passes that they could use during the year one time with a friend. And that's been a great investment for us. It costs a little at first, of course, but then they tend to bring people back with them, and then those people bring more people. So that's been one of the best sources of growth for the program, and I have a story to share on that later. Sharing the energy with outsiders. So what happens in the room is wonderful for those 150 people who are attending, but actually you have a broader audience available to you if you're using some creative marketing. So I'm going to use these next few slides to jump into some creative marketing resources that we have. One of the things that we started this last year is doing Facebook Live testimonials. We've been gathering testimonials over the course of the LEAP program, but this year we decided let's broadcast those live using this very easy, very free technology available to us. That definitely had an impact because people would share, especially when they knew somebody, and what came out of people's mouths impromptu immediately after a program where you could tell that they were feeling inspired, you're not going to get that on paper. It's always a little more constructive when somebody has to sit down and put pen to paper. But when you get them on the spot and they're just really enthused about the program, you have a real testimonial. This can apply to any program that you're ever doing. If you know that your audience is thrilled about where they've been, grab a Facebook Live testimonial. We try to do 2 or 3 of those per program, and then we post those and attach our hashtag. We also created a Facebook group. Initially, it was a closed group, but that made it hard to find, so we've opened it up to be a public group. But what's nice about that is it can be a little more personal. As a group, you can do chats, you can do discussions, you can post things specific to just the LEAP event, and it's not mixed in with all your chamber stuff. So we're going to continue to grow that Facebook group presence and the community that's part of it. We also think that that's going to have a big impact when it comes to registration. The third thing that we did is to create a hashtag focused on the event, and I think so many of us do that already. Those hashtags are really important to create a string of conversation. The string of conversation is important to not only the attendees, but us as the chamber and tracking what are people saying about our program. It also gives us the opportunity to share member feedback and make them look good at the same time. Some additional marketing. We all have branded materials, but just to make sure that those branded materials are where the majority of the pictures are going to be every single time. Yes, you see a chamber flag in the background. We have banners too, but we did get our own chamber flag that we put up on stage. That's always there by the podium. We have a step and repeat banner that we take that ends up in all the speaker photos that get published. And then we also have a tablecloth. When we come in, we pre-print all the name tags. We have 2 tablecloths and 2 tables, and it's just a first impression way to make sure that your brand is there as people arrive. And then we also look for ways to stimulate conversation in every place that we can. What you see on the slide there is what we call our table talk cards. We understand sometimes when people come to events, they maybe don't know anybody. So this is the idea that if you're sitting at a table with somebody you don't know, we can help stimulate some conversation. One thing they have in common is they both came to the LEAP program. Why? And hopefully the conversation will go from there. You'll notice we also put our hashtag on there. So anything that we have an opportunity to communicate with our individuals, we want to try to make sure that the hashtag is there. For example, the name tags that you saw on the table are printed name tags. We also have the LEAP DSM hashtag on there, so people see that and remind themselves that, hey, if I'm tweeting or Facebooking about the LEAP program, I'm going to put this hashtag in there. If we have slides for the program, we also make sure that the hashtag is on the slides. And this is another way to market your program, but how is that program giving back to the community? One of the things the LEAP committee started this year is that they found a philanthropic partner. So they adopted a local organization called Dress for Success, a local chapter of Dress for Success, and our attendees could bring their clothing donations every month to Dress for Success, who was there. We gave them some free seats and some podium time, and then they could take the donations away with them. So everybody left feeling good. They felt like they'd done something. They were able to clean out their closets just by simply coming to the LEAP program, but it also looked good for the chamber. It was one easy way for us to give back to the community. And Dress for Success is one of our chamber members too. We also started an awards program this last year for the LEAP program. So you'll see our first 3 LEAP award winners. The gentleman in the center, we started a Champion of Equality award. He was actually the chair and co-chair of the LEAP committee for the last couple years. Extraordinary gentleman. And the awards that they are holding, and he didn't know he was going to get his, by the way. The awards they're holding, if it looks like they are broken, we actually had those specially created for the LEAP program. So it's a circular plate that is with crushed glass over top of the Des Moines skyline. So it's a really one of a kind, unique piece that they could be proud to have. And we wanted to make sure, again, back to the marketing, that if somebody saw that award sitting on somebody's desk, they had to ask about it. There's nothing else like that in town. It's a very, very cool award. So here's a few tips and lessons that we've learned through the LEAP program. If you are doing a program currently or you're thinking about doing one of these, know that your speakers sell. The speaker over there on the right, she sells. She is a name that everybody in our community knows and wants to see. So she was actually our closer for this last series. Make sure you start and finish with your strongest speakers. We started the last series with actually a TV newscaster who had an amazing work-life balance story to share. She was skewered on social media, in fact, for showing up on social media without her hair or makeup done. So that was an interesting one. And of course, have your backups. Make sure those backups are strong too. Keep your registration simple and one stop. So this is your portal to get people engaged with your program. We sell it as a series. That makes actually the administrative side really easy for us as staff throughout the year. We also make it available workshop by workshop. So if somebody doesn't want to attend the series or can't make that decision at the time, they can still go workshop by workshop. It just ends up costing more that way. The other consideration we have as we're setting up registration is keep in mind that an admin might be registering multiple employees. So just make sure you have an easy way for an admin to get a dozen people registered if need be. We allow ample time for registration. We try to lock in all the speakers and announce the whole series and give at least 6 weeks for registration to happen. Many of the attendees who participate don't necessarily have the authority to get the money right away, so they have to gain permission, so that gives them time to get permission to sign up for the series. And then the other thing that we've learned to do early on, and I'm glad we did it, was building our demographics into the registration form. You do need to keep those questions optional, but most people will fill them out, add a little description of why you want to have that information. But that information will help build your data board as you're going to, and you can start to look for those trends. As are your age shifting? Is your industry shifting? Are the genders shifting? A point of curiosity a lot of times is how do you fund or how do you monetize a program like this? We actually started with a very low sponsorship, a top sponsorship of $3,000, which for us at the time in 2015 was enormous. Our top sponsorship prior to that was only $1,000, so that was a big jump. In 2017, we launched our first total resource campaign, and that was the year that we recognized the true value of the LEAP program. We're sitting down with the chair of the TRC, and he says, okay, what is the LEAP program? So we explained what it was. How often does it happen? Well, it happens 9 times a year. Okay, so he kept asking all these questions, and he said, you're charging how much for the presenting sponsor? I said, well, $3,000. He said, oh, you're way undervaluing that. You need to charge at least $10,000. I looked at him and said, are you kidding me? I said, we have never charged $10,000 for any sponsorship. Why do you think somebody would pay $7,000 more than the year before for the sponsorship? And he explained his theory, and I said, okay, I'll try it. It was not a problem. The program was worth $10,000 to our member companies. The program had taken place for 3 years at that point, so it was a no-brainer for them. So everything was bumped up with that. We actually do not get a lot of, we don't have a lot of problems selling sponsorship to the LEAP program. I think our biggest challenge is finding enough sponsorship for all those who want to have a part of it. We do have corporate tables available. We sell tables of 6 that get you into the whole series plus the conference for only $2,000, and that is the deal of the century. Series tickets this year are going to be $299, and that includes the 9 workshops and the half-day conference. And again, if you've been involved with professional training in the past, that is a real deal. So we try to keep it very affordable, but we do continue to bump up the prices according to our cost as well to make sure that we're not losing money on the event. One of the things that isn't as easy to measure, but it does take place, is we get a lot of new memberships as a direct result of the LEAP program. We also keep a lot of our members because of the LEAP program. Sometimes simply the discount is worth it, but the value of having a program like that and being part of it as a company is a reason to be a member and to retain your membership. And that's true of several of our major programs as well. We also have a LEAP committee, and I think that's really important. Whether you have a small staff like ours or if you have a larger staff, having a group of committed volunteers for a program like this is really important to keep it going because it is a lot of work and there are so many moving parts that you want to make sure that you keep on top of. We actually do an election for this committee, and that gains additional commitment. When you go the election route, they show up to the meetings and they take their role seriously. But what I will say is with your chair and co-chair, make sure you have a hand in that. Those are the 2 most important people because they're the ones who are going to drive that committee. And if you don't have a strong chair or co-chair, a lot of that weight is going to fall back on you as staff. So make sure you have some strong leaders in there who care just as much about the program as you do and who want to continue to grow it through this committee. That nomination process also helps us make sure we have the right talents and perspectives on our committee. We'll talk about why on the next slide. But those people can also do a lot of the research and time-consuming tests that we normally do. So, for example, with the awards process, doing the first awards, they came up with the process, they came up with the application, they sent it out, they kept track of the nominations, came back with their selections. As staff, we had very little to do with the awards process other than paying the bill for the special award and helping ensure that the winner selection was fair. So your committee members can do a lot of work if tasked accordingly. And again, that's where the chair and co-chair comes in. So here's a little about what our committee structure looks like. We have our major sub-chairs, I suppose. They're tasks that they're responsible for, and those individuals are allowed to have committee volunteers if they wish. Some of them like to work independently. You'll notice on there our metrics and analytics lady. She's an analyst. She didn't need a committee to do the data. She just wanted to do that independently, and that's fine. But the curriculum committee, on the other hand, has a lot of work to do with the speakers, so they needed a pretty ample committee. And they actually met on the side every other month just to keep going on that for the next year. This is one of those handouts that you'll have available to you too, so you can digest and look at that a little more closely. This this is an example of the handout that we would do for each of the program. It's a trifold, front and back trifold. And I mention it not only because the committee would put this together every month. They actually did all the creation and design and sent it to us, and we just simply printed before the program. Again, value of having a committee. But this trifold was the best way for us to acknowledge and recognize our volunteers as well as our sponsors. Everybody who came in the door got one of these. They had their speaker bio in front of them. They had some information about our philanthropic recipient, but they also had the names and the companies of all those who were making the LEAP program happen. So that's really important. Anytime you can get those logos in the hands of the attendees, do so. And I put the samples of the handouts in your materials as well so that you have those available to you. So I'm going to share a few success stories, and then we can open up for some questions in these last minutes. This first one is Ashley Fahey. She is now CEO of the Ancient Energy Amaranth Granola. She started in the LEAP program with a guest pass. If you remember, we gave that to everybody who was a series attendee. So she came as somebody's guest several years ago. At that time, she only had a notion in her mind that she wanted to own a business someday. Eventually, she got involved with the LEAP committee. She ended up moving up to the co-chair position this last year. She last year took a yoga retreat in Mexico, and during that retreat, suddenly this seed of an idea came to life for her, and she came back with a flurry and she said, okay, I know exactly what I'm going to do. So she went to work, put together her business plan, consulted, and within 6 months of that retreat, she was now the CEO of her own business, Ancient Energy Amaranth Granola. And that's available now in about 10 different stores in Des Moines and rapidly growing. And it is delicious, I can testify. What's interesting about Ashley, she was actually pretty senior at a company called Berkshire Hathaway. If you're familiar with Berkshire Hathaway, that's Warren Buffett's company. Analyst background, and that analyst background actually has been very advantageous to her as a business owner, coming in with the numbers to all the stores that she meets with. So she's an inspiration and a result of the LEAP program. This is Whitney Warren. You might have seen her in some previous photos as well. She was our photographer for this LEAP program this last year. She already had a photography company. She attended LEAP actually. The first time she came was because her mom was one of our speakers, and she was so inspired by the event at the time. Plus her mom said, oh, by the way, Whitney, you should go to this every month. So she started coming to it every month, and she was a business owner who wanted to expand her business, and she found inspiration through the program for doing that and some of the resources she needed as well. This last year, she donated her photography, gained some additional visibility through the program. She expanded and got a bigger location, grew her staff, and in the last month, she has opened her second business called Brand Launch. So now she is a multi-entrepreneur. She was also the winner of our very first LEAP Pipeline, which is our YP award that we gave out at our half-day conference this last October. And then the third success story I'm going to share today, this is Holly Kallstrom. She's the VP of Finance at G-Commerce, and I was at a dinner for our Regional Chamber of Commerce, the Great Women Partnership, the other week, and she was right behind me. I was about to introduce some people to her, and I heard the CEOs around her introducing her. I said, hi, this is Holly. Let me introduce you to, and she's a rising star at our company, and oh, they could not speak better about her. They were so proud of her at G-Commerce, and she is somebody, she actually got introduced to LEAP this last fall. The half-day conference was her first exposure. She came as a friend, used that guest pass. She actually then immediately went back to G-Commerce and said, hey, we need to have a table this next year. So initiated that sponsorship. She applied for the LEAP committee and was voted on to be part of that. And then she has said from day one, and she'll say this at G-Commerce too, she wants to have her own business on the side as well. Similar to Ashley, she's not sure what yet, but she's determined to make that happen, and she'll mention that anytime you talk to her. So she is coming up with a business very soon. But this is the point that I like to mention, is that LEAP is not just about entrepreneurship, it's also about intrapreneurship. And so make sure that we're fostering at both ends of the spectrum there, because we certainly don't want companies thinking that we're going to take people away through this program and make them all start businesses. So I have just a few testimonials, and I'll kind of leave these on the screen. If anybody has some questions, I know we're down to the last few minutes, so I'll just open up for that.
right. Well, thank you, Jennifer. Awesome information, great details and overview, and really, really appreciate your presentation. And everyone, if you haven't seen it, you can download a copy of this presentation on the webinar panel. If you look on the right-hand side, it says handouts. Just click on there and download. You can get it right there, and also I will repost it with the recording. So let's see if we have any questions. Here's a question, Jennifer. You noted that when you were developing your program, you specified takeaways, or you had them talk about the takeaways. Can you give an example of some of the takeaways from the workshops that you hold for LEAP?
Sure. And if you don't mind, I'm going to go back to that slide just so that we can all kind of see that. So I think the 2017 curriculum is a really, really good example of the takeaways. So give me just a minute here. Sorry, it's taking longer than I thought. Almost there. Okay. So going back to this, let's use negotiation at the top. Winning people over and getting what you want. So negotiation can go a lot of different ways. Specifically, when we want to know how do you convince people. So we actually got into the science of negotiation. What is the brain science? Let's see. Let me find a better example here. We'll go down to leadership. On the August 1 leadership is probably a really good example. He specifically said, okay, in leadership, there is a science, there's brain science to go with this that help you operate. So he went into the neurological part of leadership and what makes us tick as leaders so that we can understand not only ourselves and what motivates us, but also when we're working with people, what motivates them. Leadership comes in all different forms, shapes, and sizes. So we just want to make sure that we were really focused on the brain science of that piece. This maybe isn't the best example. I have some better ones that I can probably upload as well that have 2 or 3 different takeaways that we give to the speakers.
Okay. I have a couple questions relate to men attending the program. First is, how do you engage with male community members to get them to attend these female-driven events? And the second relate is, how do you convince a male-dominated leadership board and staff of this particular chamber that this program is not threatening to them, that it won't be male bashing, and that encouraging women to be involved shouldn't be threatening?
That's a great question, and it's not an easy route to go. What we have found is it takes that gender to convince the other gender. So when I'm asking a gentleman to come to the program, I'm actually usually talking to somebody who's already been to the program who knows it's okay to be there. And I'm asking them to actually refer and invite people of the same gender. That works a lot better. Some people will come just because I'm asking them to, but it works if a guy is asking another guy. Now, when you're working with a male-centric board and you're a female, I would say have your numbers there solid, as well as go back to the stakeholders. Make sure you have a few male stakeholders along with you to make the pitch alongside you. Making sure that it's safe, ensure them that you're talking with the speakers in advance and creating a safe environment. Having that template is going to be a good way to prove that you're true to your word. Hopefully that helps, and I'm happy to discuss that a little more in depth when we have more time.
Okay. Another question is, how do you sell your sponsorship so high? What's included? Is it $10,000 for all events or per event?
It's actually the whole series, and that's how we sell it so high. Is it's the whole series, and we're not selling one by one. So we sell all of that in advance during our TRC series, and when you put it into the numbers of it, of that $10,000 gets you the 9 workshops plus the half day. That breaks down to $1,000 per event. Within that $1,000, you have 150 people in the room each time. To the numbers people who are doing the math, that usually makes sense to them, as well as when you put the perks in front of them too, and the special advertising and their logo. And LEAP has a presence now, 5 years in. It has a reputation. That also helps that number sell because people know that it's a solid program.
Okay, we have a few more questions. I'll take one more, but as I said, we can get in touch with you, or Jennifer can get in touch with you to answer any questions that we haven't gotten to. Are all of the women that participate in the programs chamber members? All the attendees, I guess.
No, and actually I'm so glad you asked that. We make it open to the public. It just costs more if you're not a member. So you get about $100 discount for the series if you're a member. That actually is one of the reasons people will join, especially if they're small companies. It's just simply to get that discount. But we do make it available and accessible to anybody who's interested. It's just driven and sponsored by the chamber. So that's been a big perk for us, and that helps with the growth as well, as making sure that it is inclusive of everybody who's interested.
Okay. Well, thanks, Jennifer. I really appreciate the presentation, and congratulations on this program and on the awards that it's won, and thanks everyone for participating. Just a reminder that the webinar was recorded, and I will post the recording along with a copy of the presentation and also the handout that Jennifer mentioned on our ACC webinar page by Monday, February 4th. And you can find that by going to our website, www.acce.org, clicking on Professional Development, hovering over ACC University Online, and then clicking on Webinars. So you'll see this webinar at the top, and then many of our other webinars that we've done and recorded over the last several months and years on that page as well. So please feel free to visit that page and listen to this and other webinars. Our next webinar will be on Thursday, February 14th at 2 p.m. And when the leadership of the Chamber of Commerce of Hawaii will present on their award-winning Hawaii on the Hill program. This program showcases the Aloha State's food, culture, and industries while connecting its members with policymakers, resources, and other connections to expand their businesses beyond Hawaii. Learn how the Chamber grew this program over the years, providing value to keep it fresh and innovative, even for repeat participants, and has managed costs through sponsorships to keep it affordable. So you can register for this webinar on Hawaii on the Hill on our ACC events page, which you can get to by clicking on Professional Development, hovering over Events, and clicking on Upcoming Webinars. So thank you again to Jennifer for taking the time to present today's webinar. Thank you everyone for your participation and interest. Hope you all have a great afternoon. Hope everyone's staying warm out there. And we will see you the next time for the next ACC webinar. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.